Welcome back to the Old Photo Vault channel. The staircase at Raynham Hall, Norfolk, England, autumn 1936. The house was quiet when the photograph was taken. Raynham Hall had stood for centuries, its central staircase worn smooth by generations of footsteps, most of them long forgotten. The photographer was adjusting his camera when his assistant suddenly stopped. He said there was something on the stairs, not a person. Not exactly, but a pale shape, veiled, moving slowly downward, as if it had all the time in the world. There was no sound, no footsteps, only the feeling that someone was passing through a space they once knew well. They raised the camera and took the shot. When the film was developed, a figure appeared where no one had been standing, a soft, drifting form suspended between the steps. It would later become known as the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, believed to be linked to Lady Dorothy Walpole, a woman who lived here centuries earlier and died under circumstances that were never fully explained. It could be light, it could be exposure, or it could be something else entirely, because some places remember the people who loved them, and some staircases are never truly empty. The face in the upper corner, unknown location, early 1900s. At first glance, this looks like an ordinary portrait. An elderly couple stands together, dressed carefully, facing the camera the way people did when photographs still felt permanent. Nothing about them seems unusual. Their expressions are calm, their posture is still. But if you let your eyes drift upward, to the upper right corner, something else begins to appear. A face, not sharp, not fully formed, just enough to suggest eyes, a nose, the faint outline of a head emerging from the darkness behind them. It doesn't belong to either of the people in the photo. It isn't aligned with their bodies, and no one at the time seems to have noticed it at all. There are no records explaining who that face could be. No mention of a third person standing there. No reason for a reflection, a portrait, or a figure in that space. It could be damage to the photograph. It could be pareidolia, the mind searching for meaning, or it could be something more unsettling, because some photographs don't reveal everything at once. Some details wait quietly, until someone, decades later, finally looks up. The figure by the window, unknown home, early 1900s. At first, this photograph feels playful. A group of women crowd together, leaning and stacking their heads, turning a formal portrait into something light, almost mischievous. The room feels lived in. A chair pulled aside, a plant by the dresser, everyday objects frozen in place. Nothing about the scene suggests fear, but on the right side of the image, near the window, something stands apart. A tall, rigid figure. Its shape is human, but not quite alive. The face appears hollow, pale, and fixed, more like a mask than an expression. It doesn't lean toward the group. It doesn't join the moment. It simply stands there, separate, watching. Some say it's only a mannequin or a dress form, common in homes at the time. Others notice how out of place it feels, positioned near the light, yet strangely untouched by it. No one in the photograph reacts. No one looks in its direction, which raises a quiet question. Was it meant to be seen at all? Because sometimes the most unsettling presence in a photograph isn't the one drawing attention. It's the one everyone seems to ignore. Edward Mallerie's portrait, unknown studio, circa 1915. Edward Mallerie sat still the way the photographer asked him to. His suit was carefully pressed, his tie straight, his posture practiced. This was meant to be a simple portrait, the kind families kept on mantels or tucked into drawers. But something went wrong. As the exposure stretched on, a pale fog began to creep across the image. It wasn't smoke in the room. No one else was present. Yet when the photograph was developed, Edward's face was no longer whole. One eye remained. Part of his mouth lingered. The rest of his features dissolved into a cloudy blur. as if something had passed through him rather than in front of him. What makes the image more unsettling is what appears behind him. A tall, shadowed shape, indistinct but upright, as though another figure had been standing there all along. Edward never spoke about the photograph. Friends later said he disliked having his picture taken after that day. It could be a technical error, a long exposure, a flaw in the plate, or it could be something quieter. A moment when Edward Mallerie was not entirely alone. And the camera noticed before he did. The man at Hancock County Bank, Georgia, USA, circa 1890. The building was already old when Thomas Caldwell worked there. Hancock County Bank was small, just wood, a porch, and a single doorway, where people came to deposit their trust more than their money. Thomas was the bank clerk. Every morning he unlocked the door, swept the porch, and stood behind the counter where everyone could see him. He was known as a careful man, quiet, the kind of person who never rushed and never raised his voice. This photograph was taken after closing hours. The porch is empty. The door is shut. And yet, standing just to the right of the entrance, a faint human shape appears. Tall, narrow, almost transparent, as if someone were waiting to be let inside. There are no records of anyone else present that day. No shadow that should fall that way. No reflection that explains a figure with shoulders, legs, and a suggestion of a head. Local stories say Thomas Caldwell died suddenly not long after. Some say from illness, others say from worry after the bank failed. Nothing was ever written down clearly. It could be light, it could be exposure, or it could be a man who spent his life guarding a doorway and never quite learned how to leave it. Eleanor Whitfield at the abandoned ward, unknown city, circa 1920. Eleanor Whitfield was supposed to be alone that night. The building had already been abandoned, its walls stained, its doors sealed, its rooms left to decay in silence. She entered only to document what remained, carrying a camera and a small lamp. This photograph was taken near what records describe as a former hospital ward. At first, Eleanor believed she had captured herself by accident. A blurred reflection, a movement caught mid-exposure. But when the image was developed, the figure near the wall was too clear to dismiss. A woman sits slumped against the stone. Her mouth is open, frozen in what looks like a silent cry. Her clothing appears old, hospital-like, stained and heavy, as if it had never been removed. Eleanor insisted she never saw anyone while taking the photo. No sound, no movement, no one answering when she called out. Later, she would learn that the building once housed patients who were left behind when the ward was shut down. People whose names were lost long before the walls began to crumble. It could be a double exposure. It could be damage to the film, or it could be something far more unsettling. A moment when Eleanor Whitfield photographed someone who had been waiting there long before she arrived and never truly left. Margaret's Christmas tree, suburban home, USA, December 1962. Margaret Collins took this photograph on Christmas morning. The tree had been decorated the night before, tinsel draped carefully, lights checked twice, presents stacked just the way she liked. It was meant to be a simple family memory. At first glance, nothing feels wrong. A doll stands by the gifts. The room is quiet. The tree glows softly in the corner. But when Margaret had the film developed days later, she noticed something she hadn't seen that morning. Inside the branches of the tree, just left of center, a face seems to emerge. Faint, pale, half hidden among the tinsel, as if someone were peering out from between the needles. It isn't sharp, it isn't fully formed, but it has the suggestion of eyes and a mouth. Margaret said no ornament had that shape. No reflection should have landed there. And no one else had been in the room when the photo was taken. She kept the picture anyway, because some memories don't stay the way we remember them. And sometimes, the longer you look at a happy moment, the more it feels like someone else was there too. The girl behind them, Riverside Park, Indonesia, circa 2009. Dina Rama thought it was just another casual photo. Three friends sat together by the railing, laughing, relaxed, unaware of anything beyond the frame. The night was warm, the flash was harsh, and no one asked to check the picture afterward. There was no reason to. It wasn't until later, scrolling back through the images, that Dina noticed the background. Behind the empty plastic chairs, just beyond the light of the flash, a female figure seems to be standing. Long hair falls straight down. Her dress is pale, almost blending into the darkness. Her face is indistinct, turned slightly away, as if she wasn't meant to be seen directly. Dina is certain no one was standing there. The area behind them had been empty. No one moved past while the photo was taken. The girl in the background doesn't react to the camera. She doesn't look surprised. She doesn't lean forward. She simply stands, quietly, as if waiting for the moment to pass. Some say it's just motion blur. Others say it's a trick of the light. But Dina has never taken another photo at that park since, because sometimes the most unsettling thing about a picture isn't what your friends remember. It's what only the camera seems to notice. Emily Harper and the Empty Chair. Unknown Home, USA. Circa 2007, Emily Harper was just practicing. She stood in the living room with her bass guitar, smiling as someone raised the camera. The amplifier hummed softly behind her. The old armchair pushed slightly to the side. Unused, unimportant. The photo was taken quickly. No one checked it. It wasn't until later that something felt wrong. On the armchair beside Emily, a dark shape appears to be sitting. Not solid, not fully formed, but heavy enough to bend the light around it, as if a body were occupying the space. The cushion looks pressed. The shadow has weight. Emily insists the chair was empty. No one had been sitting there. The room had only been the two of them. What unsettles her most is the timing. The chair had belonged to her grandfather, who used to sit there every evening, listening while she practiced. He had passed away just months before the photo was taken. It could be shadow, it could be the flash, or it could be something quieter. Someone who never stopped coming to listen, even after the chair was supposed to be empty. The Girl in the Window. MRT train, Southeast Asia. Circa 2008. Lynn Tran remembers this ride clearly. It was late evening, the train mostly quiet, and the four friends squeezed onto one bench, smiling as someone lifted the camera. The moment felt ordinary. Tired legs, shared jokes, the gentle sway of the carriage. No one looked at the window. The photo was taken with flash, too fast to notice anything else. Later, when Lynn looked at the image on a computer screen, her smile faded. In the dark glass behind them, a girl's face appears, pale, stretched, and distorted by the reflection. Her eyes seem too wide. Her mouth hangs slightly open, as if caught mid-breath. She doesn't match anyone on the train. Her position doesn't align with the seats or the aisle. Lynn is certain the window had shown only darkness. No one had been standing behind them. No reflection should have formed a face that clear. Some say it's just glass and light, a trick created by flash and motion. But Lynn has never sat facing a train window since, because sometimes, when you look back at a happy moment, you realize the glass was never empty. It was watching the entire time. Anna Fisher and the Quiet Guest, Central Europe, circa 1910. Anna Fisher sits upright on the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She looks calm, composed, the way people did when photographs required patience. The room around her feels orderly. Lace cushions, a small table, a book set down carefully, as if interrupted mid-thought. At first, the image seems complete. Then you notice the chair behind her. A second figure sits there. Faint, almost transparent. A woman's outline, softly blurred, her face present but drained of weight, as though the light passed through her without resistance. She doesn't cast a shadow. She doesn't disturb the objects around her. Anna never mentioned anyone else being in the room. Family records say the photograph was taken shortly after her older sister, Elise Fisher, died following a long illness. Elise had spent her final months sitting in that very chair, too weak to join conversations, content just to listen. The photographer dismissed the image as a technical flaw. A long exposure, a shifting subject. But Anna kept the photograph close for the rest of her life. Because sometimes, grief doesn't ask to be explained. It simply sits quietly behind you, hoping not to be asked to leave. Arthur Bellamy and the Woman in the Doorway. England, circa 1905. Arthur Bellamy is sitting comfortably in the garden, one foot resting on the small table, a cigarette held loosely between his fingers. The afternoon looks calm. The house behind him stands open, curtains pulled aside to let in the light. Nothing about the moment feels staged or tense. This was meant to be a picture of leisure. But behind Arthur, in the dark space between the open doors, someone else is standing. A woman's figure emerges from the shadow. Her face is faint but present. Her body is upright, unmoving, framed perfectly by the doorway, as if she knows exactly where to stand. She does not step forward. She does not hide. She simply watches. Arthur never noticed her. Family letters identify the house as belonging to the Bellamy estate, where Arthur often stayed during summers. Records also mention Clara Bellamy, his older sister, who died several years earlier after a long illness and was said to prefer standing quietly in doorways, observing rather than speaking. The photographer dismissed the shape as shadow. Arthur laughed it off when shown the print, but the doorway remains the darkest part of the image, and the only place where the light seems unwilling to enter. Some say it's coincidence. Others say Clara was only doing what she always had, standing just inside the house, waiting for her brother to look back. Private Samuel Hart and the rider who never dismounted. United States, circa 1918. The horse stands perfectly still, saddled and ready, marked clearly with the letters US on its flank. This was a military photograph, taken during a quiet moment when nothing important was supposed to be happening. The rider is missing. At least, that's what everyone thought at first. The horse belonged to Private Samuel Hart, a cavalryman known for refusing to let anyone else handle his mount. Witnesses said Samuel had stepped away only briefly when the photo was taken, just long enough for someone to capture the horse on its own. But when the image was developed, a faint human outline appeared above the saddle. A torso without weight, a head with no clear features, as if someone were still mounted there, holding the reins, but no longer fully present. Samuel never returned to claim the photograph. Records show he was killed weeks later during a training accident, thrown from a horse that bolted without warning. Some dismissed the image as double exposure. Others pointed out how the reins hang as if still guided by unseen hands. The horse was later reassigned. It never allowed another rider, because sometimes loyalty doesn't end at death, and some soldiers remain exactly where they last felt needed, even after the rider is gone. Rachel Moore and the face near her hand. California, USA. Circa 1971, Rachel Moore was posing casually in her apartment, one hand resting against the beaded curtain, the other hanging loosely at her side. The walls were covered with posters, music, art, fragments of a life still being figured out. Someone asked her to stand still. She did. The photograph was meant to capture the room. Rachel was almost incidental. It wasn't until the print came back that anyone noticed the detail near her right hand, just beside her fingers, in the soft blur of the image. A face seems to appear, small, faint, too defined to be dust, too shaped to be light alone. An eye socket, the curve of a nose, a mouth half formed, as if emerging from the space where her hand should be empty. Rachel swore there was nothing there. No reflection, no poster, No photograph hung at that height. What unsettled her most was the scale. The face felt close, not on the wall, not behind her, but hovering in the same plane as her body, as though it were reaching the room through her. Friends suggested double exposure, a flaw in the film. Rachel kept the photo, but she never hung it, because some images don't just record where you stood. They capture what stood with you, close enough to touch, close enough to be missed until it was already there. Laura Bennett and the child at her side, Suburban Street, USA, circa 1973. Laura Bennett stands smiling beside the tree, her hands folded neatly behind her back. The afternoon looks ordinary. Parked cars, quiet houses, the soft light of a neighborhood that feels safe and familiar. This was meant to be a simple portrait before dinner. Nothing more. At first, that's all it seems to be. But near Laura's left side, close to her skirt and just above the grass, a small figure begins to appear. A child's shape. Short, slight. The face is faint but present, turned toward the camera with dark, hollow eyes and a mouth that doesn't quite settle into an expression. No child had been standing there. Laura remembers the moment clearly. She was alone. No one crossed the yard. No one crouched near her feet. The photographer didn't notice anything unusual when the shutter clicked. The figure is too low to be a reflection, too detailed to be shadow alone, and positioned so close it feels almost intentional, as if the child were standing where Laura once stood years earlier. Family members later mentioned a younger cousin, Emily, who had died in an accident on that same street a decade before. Remembered for following older relatives everywhere she went. It could be film exposure, it could be coincidence, or it could be something quieter. A child who recognized the place, recognized the person, and stepped back into the frame just long enough to be remembered again. Evelyn Harrington on the Grand Staircase, Europe, circa 1912. The staircase was the pride of the house. Wide, polished, carefully carved, designed so guests would slow their steps without realizing why. This photograph was taken in the late afternoon, when the light softened the wood and filled the hall with warmth. No one was supposed to be on the stairs. Yet halfway up, just beside the banister, a woman's figure appears, pale, narrow. Her outline is faint, as if the air itself had taken a human shape for a moment. She doesn't touch the railing. She doesn't disturb the light. She simply stands there, facing downward. The family later named her Evelyn Harrington. Evelyn was the youngest daughter of the household, known for lingering on the stairs, listening to conversations below, never quite ready to join them. She died young, after an illness that kept her confined to the upper rooms. No one remembered seeing her when the photo was taken. The photographer insisted the staircase was empty. It could be a long exposure, a trick of shadow and varnished wood, or it could be something far quieter. A girl who never learned how to leave the place where she always paused, still standing between floors, still waiting for someone to look up. Mary Ellison in the locked room, England, circa 1900. The room looks ordinary at first. A small table, coats hanging on the wall, 2 chairs pulled back, as if someone had just stood up and forgotten to return. The photograph was taken to document the interior of the house after it had been emptied. No one was supposed to be inside, but in the doorway, pressed softly into the grain of the wood, a woman's figure appears, pale, narrow. Her shape is faint, almost absorbed by the door itself, as if she were becoming part of it rather than standing in front of it. Her face is barely visible, just enough to suggest eyes, a mouth, a presence that hasn't fully decided whether to be seen. The family later identified her as Mary Ellison. Mary had lived in the house for years, sleeping in the small back room beyond that door. She died there quietly, alone, and the door was kept closed for a long time afterward. When the house was finally cleared, the room was said to feel colder than the rest. The photographer insisted the doorway was empty, The exposure was short. The house was silent. It could be a flaw in the image, a stain on the wood, a trick of old film, or it could be something far more personal. A woman who stayed exactly where she had always been. Standing in her doorway, waiting for someone to notice she was still home. The third woman in the field, Northern Europe, circa 1900. The photograph captures a moment of laughter. Two women lean toward each other, sharing a cigarette, their posture playful, almost defiant for the time. Their dresses are simple, their expressions relaxed. This was meant to be a joke, a small rebellion frozen in silver and light. At first, that's all you see. Then your eyes drift past them, toward the open field behind. Standing several steps back is a third woman. She's not part of the joke. She isn't smiling. Her posture is straight, her hands held calmly in front of her, as if she arrived too late or chose not to interrupt. She looks directly at the camera. No one remembered her being there. The women in the foreground said they were alone when the photo was taken. No footsteps behind them, no voice calling out. No reason for anyone to stand so far back, half swallowed by distance and blur. The third woman feels different. Too still, too composed. It could be motion blur, a long exposure, someone passing through the frame at the wrong moment, or it could be something quieter, a presence that didn't want to join the laughter, content to remain in the background, watching a moment she no longer belonged to, waiting until the photograph was finished. Margaret Hale and the third player, England, circa 1904. Margaret Hale is mid-swing, her mallet poised just above the grass. Croquet was meant to be leisurely, a polite game played slowly, carefully, with conversation drifting as gently as the ball. Her companion watches, waiting her turn, skirts brushed clean, posture proper. At first, the scene feels peaceful. Then you notice the space between them, near the ball. Pressed low against the grass, a third shape seems to form. Not solid enough to cast a shadow, not clear enough to be named. Just the suggestion of a figure. Small, crouched, as if someone were bending down to study the next move. Neither woman reacts. Neither looks down in surprise. Margaret later said they were alone that afternoon. No children nearby, no spectators standing close enough to step into the frame. The monument behind them belonged to a family whose youngest son had died years earlier after wandering onto the grounds alone. The photographer dismissed the shape as blur, a trick of motion, a flaw in the plate. But the position is unsettling. Exactly where the game would pause, exactly where attention should fall, because some places remember play long after the players are gone. And sometimes, even in quiet games meant for the living, someone else still waits patiently for their turn. Clara Whitmore at the piano, private home, Europe, circa 1910. Clara Whitmore was practicing alone that afternoon. The house was quiet, the doors closed, the lights soft enough that she didn't need a lamp. She sat straight at the piano, fingers moving carefully over a piece she had played many times before. The photograph was taken by a family member standing behind her. Nothing unusual was noticed at the moment the shutter clicked. Later, when the image was developed, someone saw him. Behind Clara, just to her left, a second figure appears, tall, pale, and faintly outlined, as if standing in the air rather than on the floor. The shape has shoulders, a head, and the suggestion of folded hands. It faces the piano, not the camera. As though listening, Clara insisted she had been alone. No one entered the room. No one stood behind her while she played. Family letters mention her older brother, Edward Whitmore, who had died several years earlier after an illness. He had been the one who taught Clara to play, often standing beside the piano, correcting her posture, listening closely to every note. The photographer blamed long exposure, a reflection, a technical flaw, but the figure stands exactly where Edward used to stand, as if some habits are stronger than death. And some music is never played alone, even when the room appears empty. Walter Hayes and the passenger on the river ferry, United States. Circa 1925, Walter Hayes sat astride his motorcycle at the front of the ferry, one hand resting on the handlebars as the river slid past in silence. The crossing was routine. Men waited, engines cooled, no one bothered to pose. This photograph was never meant to be special. At first glance, it isn't. A small ferry, a few men, 2 motorcycles secured at the bow. But when the image was studied years later, something felt off near the cabin. Behind the windows, just above the deck, a figure appears, pale, upright, and indistinct. It doesn't belong to any of the men on board. No one recalls standing inside the cabin during the crossing. The ferry operator was said to be outside, smoking, watching the shoreline. Walter insisted there had been no passenger there. The cabin was empty, the windows clear. What unsettled him most was the timing. A fellow rider, James Porter, had drowned on that same stretch of river weeks earlier after his motorcycle slipped from a similar ferry during loading. His body was never recovered. Some say it's only glare on old glass, a reflection shaped by chance, but the figure faces forward, toward the water, exactly where someone might stand if they were waiting to arrive. Still riding a journey that never quite ended, crossing a river that refuses to forget who it took. These photos don't prove anything. They simply stay with you. Each one began as an ordinary moment, until something quietly appeared where it shouldn't. Maybe it's light, maybe memory, or maybe some places and some people never truly leave. Which image unsettled you the most? What detail made you stop and look again? Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to the channel if you want to keep exploring vintage photos where the past still watches back.